Hello, everyone. Good evening, afternoon, morning from wherever you're joining. Thank you for attending the last but not least event of the year of Accounting for Impact. We are excited to have you over here. So, as a reminder, for those of you who joined for the first time, and thank you also for that, Accounting for Impact is actually a network, an initiative. We foster engagement and impact for accounting scholars and beyond. And we also aim to inspire academic colleagues of all level, all backgrounds, all expertise to reach outside the academic ivory tower to make a positive impact for better society. So we have created this initiative. You can read about it on our website. Without further ado, I will pass on to Leanne, who is one of our team members at Accounting for Impact. My job is not just to do a high-level intro, and I will close at the end. So today, Leanne will moderate the event, and we have our guest, Irene Vicek, whom she will introduce as well. So Leanne, over to you, and you know the routine. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome everybody. I'm so excited to talk to Irene Weissig today. If you had a chance to read the event description and a little bit about her, you'll know the amazing work that she's done internationally in Canada, all over, really. And we're going to talk about all of those areas today. So I'm going to structure some of my questions to try to get at some of the international work she's done, the learning work she's done, and some of the newer work that she's getting into. So, welcome, Irene. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks, Leanne. My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
And thanks, Charles.
So, on your international work, and you've done work with organizations like IFAC, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with. And the theme of today is really about collaboration, which I think is just such an important area of impact. It's a great way we can think about how to work with others. So, when you're working internationally at that level, what kinds of challenges did you face when you are trying to collaborate with these international partners to progress on IFAC initiatives? We'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I was invited to represent Canadian CPAs on the International Federation of Accountants International Panel on Accountancy Education. That's a big mouthful, but this panel, yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity, and I immediately jumped at the chance. And on the panel, part of the fun of it, but also part of the challenge, is that um, there are about 20 people who sit on the panel officially, and then there's observers. So usually it's a fairly large group that you're meeting with. And it's such a diverse community. And I just love it. I love going there. I never, normally we have meetings and we think, oh, not another meeting, but these meetings are incredible. They're always fun. They're always interesting. They're always engaging. But because you have different people from different parts of the world, they have different realities. So there's different economic realities, there's different political realities, there's different regulatory environments. There's also different views on the value that accountants add in their environment. And so you really come to a table and maybe when we talk as accountants in Canada, we have a common set of beliefs about our reality, our economic reality, how we're regulated, what we do, probably a fairly common set of values about what accountants do and the value we add. So it is different there because you have to listen in different ways there. But that is the interesting thing about that challenge is because it really makes you think about what you're saying and what you're hearing. So I think that is the challenge. And also the challenge is you have to keep an open mind. And I know a lot of times when you represent internationally your own country, your own profession, there is sort of a feeling that you have to showcase what you do. So I know all of us come to that table and we say, oh, I want to tell you what the great things are that Canada does. So and I love to talk. I think most of us as academics love to talk. So I could happily spend the time sort of just sharing what Canada does and the great things we do here. So my challenge is to temper that, to balance it. So less talk, more listen, and really try to understand where the comments are coming from. So somebody might say something, and in Canada, you immediately say, okay, what is that? Or I like that, or I don't. There, you have to really listen carefully and then think about their realities. Why might they say it that way? There's a reason, and it's not that you don't disagree. A lot of times you agree, but you can't just sort of blindly agree, right? Like you have to think, well,
Yeah.
what's the source of that comment? So those are some of the challenges, finding the common ground, because you can't move forward in those kinds of environments until you find a common ground. And finding the
How do
common
you
ground means,
navigate that? Yeah,
yeah,
because I
it's
think
hard.
that's the tricky part, right? It's fantastic to listen and understand these new environments, and I think we can learn a lot from how things get tackled in different ways in different places, but then coming to an agreement or consensus, when you are trying to collaborate with these different areas, how do you navigate that? What are there techniques you use, tools? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I always think you have to let people say what they're going to say. Like everybody wants to say something in those environments because they're representing their country. So everybody, and our chair, Anne Marie Vitale, she's rotating off the panel in December, but she was incredible. She always let everybody have a voice. Whether it was a voice going off in a different direction or a tangent or tackling something that we weren't ready to tackle, you know, part of what you have to do is let everybody get their voice. So give everybody sort of time and space. And that's the chair's decision, but it's also the rest of the panel's decision because you have to not jump in when you want to say, wait, I don't know if what are you saying there? Like I don't agree or I agree or I like that or whatever. So it's sort of allowing everybody to have a voice, and that's very important. Um, but then, it's just that flipping to listen mode. And really, instead of jumping in at the beginning, there'll be time at the end. There's always time, and like that's the chair's job as well. And she does a great job. But she makes sure that there is time at the end for everybody to have their voice. And there's a real structure to the way everybody's allowed to have their voice. Like what we do is we have tent cards. I don't have a tent card with me, but we stick our tent card with our name up like this, so there's a formal process so that it would stop people from just jumping into the conversation and taking it over, right? So I think it's that listening, and then just finally, it was putting myself in their shoes, which is hard. It's easy to say. We all say, "Oh, put yourself in their shoes," but
Yeah.
but the in-person meetings, I'm going to say that was critical for that. We did a lot online. We met very often. It was a fairly involved, time-consuming thing, but again, amazing. But you got to go in person. And so I think there was one meeting I missed in 6 years, unfortunately. It was Cape Town, South Africa this year, and I couldn't go just because I had other commitments. But you have to go and have lunch together and have the dinner together and have the chit chat on the way in the hall because that helps you understand their reality in a soft way. So then when you get in the meeting, you already have a base understanding of who they are and what they come from and what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve in the meeting. So the in-person piece for me was critical. And I through COVID, that became more challenging. Many of us on the panel had already been together before COVID. We just got in 2019, so we were lucky. We got to know each other. But it was hard for the new members to come in because, as we all know, this is harder. This is harder to have little side chit chats, and if you put it in writing in the chat, there's a different thing than just standing in the hall catching somebody getting a coffee, right? So in person for me was critical and getting to know them personally.
Yeah, there's definitely something intangible there, right? About the relationship building that happens with those little moments that it is much more, if not impossible, to replicate online. Online's great and it's very accessible and we can do lots of things, but yeah, that in-person relationship building for collaboration would be key. I'm
Yeah.
curious, and I'm sure others are as well. Um, what would you recommend for any of the folks here who might be interested in getting involved more internationally with organizations like IFAC?
I thought a lot about that. I mean, they always do calls. Like a lot of these groups do calls. Do you want to be on this committee? And I think IFAC has an open call right now. Um, so you can watch for calls, number one. I I think for me, when I reflect it, because it's not so simple, unless you are traveling, and I know Charles and Leanne, you've been traveling a lot globally, so you have those opportunities. But not everybody gets those opportunities. Maybe they don't have the funding, they don't have the time, whatever. For me, and I'm just LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a global platform. And so just get on LinkedIn. I'm always amazed at how many people are not on LinkedIn. I'm like, we make all of our students go on LinkedIn, whether they want to or not. But on LinkedIn, you can join groups. And that's incredible. Like, my LinkedIn feed, I love my LinkedIn feed. It's amazing what I get. But you know the algorithm behind it. It's like you click on the things that you are interested. If you're interested in generative AI, start to watch people who are interested in, or, who are doing good stuff in generative AI, and start to follow them. And of course, the more you click on something that's involved with that topic, the more you're going to get fed that information. So it becomes quite easy, but be conscious on what you click on. And then I think you just have to comment. The algorithm wants active engagement. But if you comment, then other people see you. You have to be visible. So in a physical world, you have to travel to be visible. You have to go to a conference, spend money, whatever. But in this world, the LinkedIn world, you can be visible at your desk, but you have to do it consistently. And I confess, I go in, fits and spurts. Sometimes I'm more engaged and sometimes I'm not. And sometimes I post or not. But you have to think about posting something. So be conscious on what you click on, but also be conscious about what you post. And what you're posting is showcasing you. You're saying this is what I believe in, and this is what I'm building my expertise in it. And sometimes you can connect with people that way. I sometimes find people reach out to me through my LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I'm interested in that or this," and it's a great source. I mean, I don't know if you know Don Tapscott, but he's involved with the University of Toronto, as am I. But he just wrote a book on identic AI. And last year at the end he was looking for ideas. So he put a post up and said, "What do you think about this?" And so that's the kind of thing, maybe you want to answer or go and get involved in that conversation. And that all those informed his book, which is kind of cool. But anyway, so you can create that global persona online, and then from that comes opportunity. I rarely apply for things. I don't mean this to sound like this, but I rarely apply for things or say, can I'm always there. I'm willing to help whenever, but it's usually through somebody comes to me and says, I saw this, or could you do that? And I always say yes. It's like, whatever, why not? Because it's helping other people move things along, right? So, yeah, so I say it's create your global presence through tools like LinkedIn.
Yeah, and it's accessible, right? You can have a free profile, you don't have to pay for it. But you can definitely
Yeah,
connect with folks and see what people are up to and absolutely get your name out there, look for opportunities where you're interested.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe we can move our discussion to some of your more learning focused work. So you, for those who maybe don't know, for some of our maybe international audience members, did a lot of work on Competency Map 2.0, which is our Canadian sort of script for how we train and teach our CPA students in Canada. You also have a very famous textbook. I think it's like the only textbook anybody uses in accounting, financial accounting. So, in those sort of learning focused impact arenas, when we think about Canada, it's very large geographically, it's very diverse. And to engage in these kinds of activities, how did you go about engaging across a really big geographic, culturally diverse, even legally diverse in Canada? We have different jurisdictions to create things like the competency map and then have it successfully adopted by all of the provinces who regulate education in Canada.
It was huge, and earlier I spoke about global collaboration is hard because everybody has different realities. But you're right, like across Canada, my gosh, there's totally different realities, economics, the way accountants practice. I mean, the footprint of Indigenous peoples is different across Canada. Sustainability, you look in Canada right now, what's happening with gas and oil and gas and pipelines and certain parts of Canada want that, other parts don't, like we're totally diverse. So, that was a huge project. And I remember I was just at the CAAA that year and I was just sitting, it was after lunch and I was lingering thinking, what session am I going to go to? And somebody from that group who was setting the task force up just sat down beside me and said, you wouldn't be interested in getting on this task force. I'm like, yes, I would. Why not? Like, it's an opportunity. And so initially I chaired it for a couple of months while they found a chair, and Tim Jackson stepped up from SHAD. He's an incredible guy, and he stepped up as the chair. But that was a real challenge. I tell you, to go across Canada. I mean, luckily for us, this is probably the only time I'm going to say luckily that the pandemic hit. But luckily the pandemic hit because I was started to get involved right in 2019 at the end. And we then got the chair early in 2020. So it was right in March when we had our first meeting as the pandemic struck. Why I say luckily is, I mean, we actually had an in-person meeting and then we moved to online. Luckily, because we could cost effectively go everywhere in Canada and we could do multiple sessions a day. I mean, the challenges with that was really, first of all, getting people to understand why we were doing that. Why did we want to sort of have a blank sheet approach to setting up the skills and competencies for pre-certification CPAs? Why? So it was getting people to understand why, because some people say everything's fine, leave it, but we have to say, no, we have to change because. So it was that case for change. And then to understand what we were doing as we started to move through and formulate our principles for working together, our framing principles for doing our research, drafting principles for drafting the map. It was to try and bring people along, so the communicating what you're doing, as we all know, anytime you're in a project, communicating to people what you're doing is hard. Because some people say, I don't care, or just show me at the end what it is, and then I'll complain later. But getting your message across, that was a big challenge. And then getting their thoughts and insights and trying to sort of capture them and distill them and pull out threads. I love doing that, by the way. I love going out and getting a million different ideas and then coding. We had a big spreadsheet and Tim and I did, I'm thinking maybe 100 presentations. Sometimes we do 4 in a day across Canada, but we were sitting at home in our own offices at home doing these presentations. We had surveys that we put out. We were always made ourselves available, like online, phone me, email me, whatever. And so Rebecca Villman, who was at CPA Canada at that time, was incredible. So Rebecca and I had this big, big spreadsheet, and every time we'd get any feedback, and during meetings, we'd both take notes, which was challenging when you're trying to listen to people. And then after we'd put them on the spreadsheet and code them all. And then I had to sit with the spreadsheet and distill this discussion. I love that kind of stuff. But those of you who are researchers, will understand this. You've got to collect that data, then pull out what are the insights you're pulling out. And then the challenge was really to say, what things do we act on? Like we say, let's take this on and let's change it. And what things do we say, no, leave it, because it is fine. And what the message there is that, maybe we need more communications to help people understand more fulsomely what we're doing, So just because somebody says you shouldn't do that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Those of you who write, that. If you're a researcher, you present something at a conference, you'll get those people who put their hands up and say, that's wrong and you shouldn't. You have to take that in and say, oh, was there really something there? Or I got what they're saying, so it may be what I was trying to do wasn't visible enough, or I didn't communicate it, or whatever, or I need a footnote or something. So that was the other challenge. You hear all this stuff, do you make the change or not? Because people will stop talking to you if you're not listening, and if you're not taking what they say on board. That is an important piece of collaboration, right? The listening, and then you have to sort of do something with what so we had big things where we'd say, are we going to make a decision about this? Are we going to change it? Are we not? And by the way, we did that with the textbook as well. Like always open. If you have anything with the textbook, it's used across Canada. I mean, I don't even know how many people use it, but most, I should say, Leanne, most universities and colleges use it. That means there's tens of thousands of students use it. It's scary when you think about it. So we're always like, if you find something you don't like, your student, like, tell us. And then we'll go and look at it, and then we'll decide if we have to change it or not, or we'll tell you our reasoning why we're doing what we're doing. But lots of challenges with that, and it was incredible at the end of the day that the comp map we did get it through. Each province had to take it out to all their stakeholders and have an agreement on this document so that we could move forward. And happy to say, although we issued it in 2022, it will be effective in 2027, a little bit later than everybody hoped, but hey, it's going forward and everybody agreed on it. But it was an incredible learning process. Honestly, you have to be humble when you listen to all this feedback, and humble and open, open
Yeah.
to whatever they're going to say.
I think that's a great tie-in to a lot of the skills that many of the folks on the call would have, right? Particularly if you're doing qualitative research, right? This was not a research project. This was a real, tangible, influences how we train accountants project, but those same skills can be applied in this other way to have a real impact on the profession, on the country, on accountants all across Canada. So I think that's a great way to think about our skills in a different way. And also a really great tie-in to your textbook, because I'm curious about how does that development process happen? How does collaboration inform the text development, but also the evolution? And you mentioned, people can reach out to you, but I'd love to hear more about the text as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because all this stuff seemed to happen at the same time. I was asked to represent Canada on the International Panel for Accountancy Education, and there my mind was open to this global collaboration, and I was listening to different things, not just the usual Canadian accounting things, right? So different things. And then CPA profession had this project called Foresight, where they got together a whole bunch of people from all over, and I was fortunate enough to be in that working group. So we spent weekends together. We'd be locked in rooms together, sweating out, figuring out what accountants do. And that really opened my mind as well. It really changed the way I thought about what accountants do as we move forward into this age of AI and sustainability and digitalization and big data, all those things. What we do is different. So then, of course, I couldn't unsee it once I'd seen it and heard it. So then it would go into the textbook. And so usually we try to float ideas at, Wiley is our publisher, and they're amazing. But, at most conferences, Wiley will be there, and usually Bruce, my Canadian co-author, and I, we speak. If they say speak, have a workshop, have a focus group, like I'm there. I want to hear what people have to say about what should be there and what shouldn't be there. And and usually, Wiley will reach out to key faculty who use the textbook to say, do you think, now that you've used it a year or two, should you change it? So there's a process where there's a lot of outreach and a lot of collaboration between the authors, the publisher, and other faculty who use the textbook, and students. I've had students reach out to me, not only my own, but from across Canada. But then we keep the open dialogue. I mean, it's like a labor of love when you produce a textbook. I think the book is 2 volumes, 1,600 pages at least, I'm going to say. And then there's all the solutions manual, the PowerPoints, we do video, like so much stuff there. But always when it takes us ages to do it. Then we cross our fingers and out it goes. And then I get the hard copy and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to open it because I'm like, what if there's a mistake in it, despite your best efforts? But if there is, there is. Nothing can be perfect, right? So then we hold our breaths while it starts to get used by people. And then, I got a question right now on, chapter 14. There was some difference between, it came across this morning, but, what's on the online database and what's in the book, solutions manual. That's fine. It's like you just have to go, hey, it's not a problem.
It's
We
living.
want
It's
this
a living
input.
document.
It's a living document, and
Yeah.
we are going to fix it. And then Bruce and I had this conversation with a lovely faculty who is a math math oriented. And he was like, you need more math in there. And, so it was a great conversation. But while I explained why we couldn't teach everything about everything, including finance and math and law and everything in an intermediate accounting textbook, we can only go so deep because the students are totally overwhelmed. But it made me think about it. Maybe we do, and there's ways we can do it without adding more pages. For instance, if I want to say the pages, because to a student, they look at that chapter, 50, 60 pages, and they're like, with our students, like it's just too much. So
Yeah.
we're always conscious of how deep we can go. But yeah, I walked around with that for a month after, and we are gonna change some stuff in the end. But in the end, I sort of say, okay, next edition. We've duly noted, and you can be in, we say to the profs if they have these really different perspectives as everything continues to evolve, I'm going to reach out to you. Are you okay with me reaching out? And as we start to draft it, you can have some input at that level. And then as long as you're not adding 10 pages to our chapter, as long as we can sort of figure out a way to tuck it in there. Yeah, sure. So, but I love that. That's sort of it's boring to have the same thing every year, every edition of the same thing. It's like, ugh, where's the fun in that? It becomes just rote, to just
Yeah.
update it for dates, update it. There might have been a standards change, but to rethink how AI is affecting how we learn, how big data and data analytics is affecting, how's the area of sustainability. Like we put a lot of sustainability features in, we put a lot of data analytics, and this sort of stemmed from my work with the MAP and with the international panel. And we put Indigenous perspectives in it. We worked with an Inuit author to give us some Indigenous perspectives. So it's like this is a soft way we can get some of those other kinds of ideas into the curriculum and get the students thinking about them.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to teach that. We just need to have their eyes open to some of these things. Like sustainability, we're not teaching sustainability in intermediate accounting, but we do have a lot of cases, we do have a lot of stories, we do touch on it. So it's just the students hear it and then it becomes part of intermediate accounting. It's not going to be on a test with 10 multiple choice questions. No, but they think with that, they have that lens now, that they're thinking about it when they think about accounting. So yeah, so we have a lot of fun with that. I love the creative side of that writing and listening to people and moving things forward. Because we can. That is a platform when we can move forward, because that book, people do use it. New faculty who may be researchers and not teachers need something to start with. They need a body of knowledge. They're putting. We helped somebody with a course outline the other day, because they said, "Oh, I'm just new. How do I do it?" And we're like, "Well, these are the topics. Just follow these chapters. Here's the material." So it's a starting point for them. They can change it later. They can put cases in, whatever. But it's a structure. It's like a skeleton that they can hang their course on, and it's
Yeah.
got the support there. So yeah, it's fun, and we do a lot of outreach, and it's fun having the workshops, and people, can then talk to you and chit chat in the hall about what they think about, what they really think about, what we wrote or not or whatever. But yeah, we're always smiling. Yeah, whatever you think, tell us, and we'll try and fix it.
And it's great to have those concepts embedded. I love hearing about how the competency map sort of influences the textbook. And I think that's really reflective of the world that we live in, where students need to be aware of these other pieces around them. Even if we're talking about a particular subject area, there's integration and there's context for the kinds of stuff that they're learning. What would you recommend if anybody here wanted to get more involved in any kinds of these initiatives?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, my publishing journey with the textbook started way, way back. I was just looking. I mean, I think I've been doing it for over 30 years, maybe 35 years, 9 editions of the text. But before that, I wrote the study guide. But I think, how did I was thinking back, how did I get it? I don't know. I just was talking to people. I said, I want to write. I wanted to have a more systemic impact on the learning environment than just me teaching. And I've taught tens of thousands, I don't know, hundreds of, I don't know how many students, lots. But it's kind of every year you get a new bat. I want to have a more systemic impact. And so I just reached out. And so I went to one of those Wiley workshops and I said, I want to help. So reach out to a publisher. Just say, they're always looking for content provider. We are. I mean, they don't pay. A lot of this is not pay for pay, but you have a case. Sure. If we're looking for a case or you have a data analytics thing or you have a video, the publishers are always open to get that kind of content. And it's just a foot in the door. And then once you get that foot in the door of the publishers, then you build a relationship with them. Then you're there and you're like, oh, do you have anything else? I got some cool Excel, spreadsheet video things that I use. Are you interested in, and yeah, they're pretty open to it. As you see, as we moved online with the textbooks, it's like a community of assets. There's an bunch of assets there from different people. It's not just Bruce and I. We're on the book, you know, but there's lots of other little resources that come from lots of different people. So reach out. I'm going to say also present, just have lunch and learns with your students or with your colleagues about an interesting topic. When I think back on my career, I'm not an expert in everything, but when IFRS came along, I was thinking about this from 2011, Canada moved over. I was so interested in it. And I'm like, well, then I just started to research it, figure it out myself. And then I put myself out there. And then people started to look to me as an expert. And I'm like, I am not an expert. I just did a bunch of research myself. Same with sustainability. People are calling me. I'm like, I am not the expert, but I've thought a lot about it. I'm online. I'm on my LinkedIn. I'm joining groups. Or Gen AI, generative AI. Like now people are looking at me and I'm like, again, I am not the expert, but I have a very strong interest. I do a ton of reading. I do a ton of outreach. So it's like, but the best way to do that, to get yourself on the hook, is to say, I'm going to do a little workshop for whoever. Start small. My students, they have to come, right? Because it's in your class. But maybe your colleagues, who maybe are not interested in it yet, but you could get them interested. But the minute you have to present, you have to think. You have to sharpen your thinking. You have to do your research, get some slides that make sense that you can share. So I would say present something, host something, a small thing at your university or institution. The last thing I'm going to say is stay in touch with your alumni. Do you stay in touch with your alumni? I do it through LinkedIn mostly, but oh my God, they do amazing things. But then you can reach out to them when they say, hey, I just got this, I'm on this workshop, whatever, I'm running this or whatever. Engage with them. And then now you've got some real life examples of what's happening in the field in practice, right? Because if we sit in our classrooms in our institutions, we get disengaged from what's really happening, right? I think we all feel that sometimes. So you have to engage. And a great way to engage is your alumni. You know your good students who loved your class, or maybe they hated your class, but in the end they saw the light and, they fought you all term. And then 2 years later, they come back and say, you were right. And you're like, thank you. Yes, I was trying to do something good for you, but they're the ones who maybe can come into your class and speak, but they help you get out there as well because they go back to their firm and say, hey, my prof does this. And maybe then you're working with the firm on something. So, stay in touch with your alumni. I think that's another one to get on that
That's
learning
awesome.
side.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I will start opening it up for questions. If anybody has any now, I will pose another one to you, Irene, while people form their thoughts. You can post it in the chat. You can raise your hand, whatever you prefer. But I know you're doing some newer work with some other professions as well, which sounds really interesting. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're navigating that with these other professions, not just accountants, but in other areas.
Yeah, so this was another thing because of my work with the task force. Again, notice as you build your credentials, then people say you've got some expertise because you did that project and you did this and whatever. And they come to you. They don't know where to go. Who's an expert in something? Who knows, right? But you've got something. It's on your LinkedIn that you did it. You've talked about it on your LinkedIn. You've posted. So people see, okay, it's bona fide. So I was approached by CPA Canada to get involved in a project with the Climate Risk Institute, and it was on professions advancing climate action competencies, right? So the minute I heard cross professions, I'm like, yay, I do want to talk to other professions because we're all trying to struggle with these climate action things. And, how are other professions seeing it? So CPA Canada sort of said, they just called me up. You're interested. I know, you're not really in the climate action space. And I said, I'm not. I dabble in sustainability a bit, but they said, but you do have the competency map stuff. So this is about competencies. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll throw my hat in the ring. So anyway, in the end, I ended up being the team lead. And there's other professions involved, engineers, architects, and planners, which is really interesting. So we've all got our own little subcommittees. And what we've decided with our subcommittee is to create baseline climate action competencies for all CPAs post designation. So I'm very excited because what I'm doing, I'm building on the Comp Map baseline for when you just get your CPA, this is what you should know. So this is like upskilling for all CPAs. And so we actually have a draft now. But the fun part was like, I think all the team leads from all the professions, we're working with our own teams, but we all said, hey, can we work together? Like, as can the team leads work together? And that has been amazing because just hearing engineers talk about climate and climate action and hear architectural planners talk about it and planners, and then how they're trying to figure out how they upskill, because this is about helping everybody move forward with this. It's an action-oriented thing, which, so that's been incredible because professionals think differently. We approach things differently. And that's fascinating to me is that, you think of an accountant, most people think numbers oriented, most people think highly analytical, but different professions think differently. And for me, that's an opportunity to broaden how I think as well, is to just say, oh, why would they think that? And they use different language as well. We had this great conversation about the word mitigation. I'm using it loosely as a non-climate expert. I'm saying, well, it's risk mitigation. Accountants always think about mitigating your risks and seizing opportunities. And they're like, no, mitigation is something specific, as greenhouse gas. And I'm like, oh, why do we have? But anyway, there's an example of where you talk and you use a word and people are having different thoughts about it. So this is really exciting. We actually have got a draft of our baseline competencies, climate action competencies for all CPAs. So we're going to be shopping it out, doing some workshops in January, to see what people think about it. But it is very exciting, a very exciting project. Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously something near and dear to my heart. So I'm looking forward to seeing it as well. That's amazing. Charles, I see you get your hand up.
Yeah, I'll get started because I don't see anybody's hand, but you're encouraged to do that. Thank you, Irene. I learned a lot more about your career and life. I put a few things on the chat. I'll make just a brief comments and I have a question on your view. First, thank you for referring to the visibility online these days. There's a saying, maybe even in my birth country, Korea, there's an app called Kakao Talk, which is kind of Korean WhatsApp. And if you don't have Kakao Talk, you don't exist. Okay, so you have to be online, like LinkedIn. If you don't not on LinkedIn professionally, it's very limiting in you. So I'm glad you seem to have used this tool and somehow snowball effect and networking, which is kind of similarly what I did as well. So I'm glad that you mentioned that without even talking about it ourselves. As I mentioned, we have a workshop that Leanne and Erica did to use LinkedIn. I agree with you. Especially accounting academics, there's very few who have LinkedIn, or if they do, they never use it. So that's a very good point you made. Thank you for highlighting that. I also advertise your book because you mentioned the book, but I know you'd be shy to advertise it, but that's great. And I want to go back to the competency map impact work you've done. Because you started it this way. I didn't really know the original story. And then people like Leanne and myself and others in Canada have been involved in these working groups, specific topics like sustainability. And I remember sitting on these working group in person right before COVID and after COVID, and we spent a lot of time. I remember like we were asked to do all kinds of exercises and just to brainstorm. And unlike other impact work, this is dragging for 5 years, as you say, right? 2022, it's not even in place yet. And now things have completely changed the way we look at sustainability, maybe in some aspect. So this is what I call the huge lag impact work. Like you do these things years ago, and it doesn't occur. Nothing happens until years later. Unlike your textbook education, what you do for IFAC, ACID on the GSSB, we work on a standard. It's like, okay, it's ongoing, right? So how do you grapple with that? Because, you spent I mean, you're very patient, or you're I don't know. It's just like doesn't happen. And I know it's out of your control because it's institutional, CPA Canada or CPA provincial. But there is this huge time lag for me between what you try to do for impact that happens, unlike research publication. Like, let's not even talk about that. That's completely hopeless. But I'm talking about real impact work you do in the profession, and it still takes 5 years or more to get it in place. There you go. So that's my question to you. How do you manage
So
that?
frustrating. But you see, I still smile because
Yeah.
we just have to keep the long game. We're in it for the long game, so we just have to keep moving it forward and not let people push it to the side. I mean, so just you have to be patient. And remember, like as Leanne was saying earlier, across Canada, each province has its own, is regulated. The profession is regulated provincially. So everyone has their own regulations. They're literally written by lawyers, and it's a different view. Even what practicing accounting is different across the country. When we were working on the map, we had a big spreadsheet because accountants love spreadsheets across Canada. Like, what is professional accounting defined in the regulation? Sometimes it's called public accounting. And what does practicing mean? And it's different across the country. So I understand, for each province, the part that held it up was really the next step after the map. The map defines what the skills and competencies are. The next project, Certification 2.0, described where, when, and how they're learned and tested or assessed. And that piece, I think, across country was very hard for them to get through. And so I think they've been, let's say, negotiating for 5 years. For me, in the end, the patience pays off because in the end, the map is there. Like, no matter how you learn it or where you learn it, sustainability is in there. And we put it in so many ways because some people, when we use the word sustainability, they said, well, where's ESG? I'm like, I don't know. Do you need ESG? I like the word sustainability, and thank God, the ISSB used the word sustainability, but even they've tweaked a little bit. Some of the standard setters have tweaked to use the words ESG in it, right? So we put both words in there. And we put EDI in there. We put it in so many ways so it was visible, so it couldn't be ignored. So no matter what, 5 years later, they can't ignore it. It's there. And same with Indigenous perspectives. It's in there. They have to pay attention to it. They have to move it forward. Emerging technologies is in there. Like we were, data governance. In a way, we wrote it at such a high level for this reason, so that it would endure no matter what happened in the meantime. So people can say what they want about what's happening to sustainability. It's fallen out of favor. It's not. It's not. I mean, sure, there may be people now riling because they have to put resources towards it, and we've got standards which are, hard to implement. But the reality is, sustainability has to be thought about more broadly. For instance, it isn't ESG. It is how we sustain ourselves as individuals, how we sustain ourselves as organizations, how we sustain ourselves as communities, as countries, globally, how we sustain ourselves. No, you can interpret that. I like that. And we left the words loose so people could interpret it different ways. But it could just be, if somebody wants to say it's just about cash flows, how do I sustain my company so I can continue to generate cash flows? Okay. If that works for you, I'm digressing a little bit. I'm on a soapbox here. I don't want to be on a soapbox, but we left the wording loose enough so that wouldn't be the thing that stopped it moving forward, But anyway, it's going to be implemented in 2027, and I'm happy with that. And one big thing that we were pushing for was support. It provides support to the faculty because the faculty have to catch up. They're going to have to stand in front of their students now, and they may not feel that comfortable. So I see that, they are working towards providing support with toolkits, and, they're starting to have a lot of meetings and sessions on it. So it will move forward. So I think you said it, Charles, patience, the big P, just it's going to happen. And you just do everything you within your power to not let it derail. If that means you soften your language, if that means you don't get on your soapbox. I mean, there were times at the university where I was trying to get a course in on sustainability. But the minute I'd say it, there would a camp who would say they didn't want it. No, because we don't believe in that. And I'm like, what? You don't believe in producing cash flows? Producing products that your customers want to buy. They don't want child labor and slavery, and they don't want to poison the water. Well, you won't have any cash flows then, so you can't go forward if you don't. But I found that I had to just not stand on a soapbox, just soften my language, soften my approach, because it's going forward. It is all going forward and it's going in the right direction. So it's that long-term view, the vector, it's in the right direction. That trend is going in the right way. So we just have to have patience and not derail it. But I think the more we rile, the more it could be derailed. So just keep even keeled and it's going to go forward and be patient. Yeah.
Yeah,
Reminds me a
no,
bit of oh, sorry, Charles. I was just going to say like when you farm, right? You plant seeds, and sometimes the seeds grow quickly, and you have something in the spring or something in the fall. And I always think of it. I think it's the bamboo tree, right? That you have to plant it, but it takes 5 years to grow. So you water, 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 and then eventually it shoots up. And I think this impact work, and maybe it's a testament to your career, Irene, the various things you've done, some come to fruition quickly, some, yeah, we got to be patient and it's going to take a long time. And I'm sure there's many initiatives we haven't talked about today that perhaps didn't go anywhere. Not all seeds grow when we plant them, but yeah, that was an interesting question, Charles, about the length of time and patience, the necessity of it.
yeah, but
And
I was refer. I mean, even if I compared overall as a research process, which I already mentioned that in our academic world is really bad because I mean it takes so long. We know that eventually something will get published. So it gets published 10 years later. There's absolutely no more relevance to it. I'm not saying that what happens with sustainability or these other topics, CP exam, have no relevance, but we have lost so much time. What frustrates me in my area is that those 5 years, within these 5 years, and I don't want to derail, but we can agree to disagree. Things like ISSB and even the CSSB have done already had time to do damage to profession and the education because now they're gonna go like, okay, they have established themselves, and I wish that I had moved quicker because I thought that by Competency Map 2.0, they're going to change the exam. I don't know, in the US when I was there were some changes in the minor changes maybe, but it was moving more fluidly. And I almost forgot about it in 2024. I was like, where? Maybe it's not validated or approved. I lost track of it. So that was frustrating because at the time there was other things that happened, things develop, not necessarily good for society, and that was a concern. And I thought that, man, and now, yeah, you're right. You are making this is the impact because all Canadian universities are grappling with change of programs now as we speak. We're getting emails now about this, trying to get courses. Of course, it's gonna happen. I just feel like we missed 3, 4 years of time, and
I
this is
know,
not a
but
research paper, this is like a professional change in
yeah.
the urge of our current being destroyed world, right? So I'm just frustrated with the whole political aspect that you have to convince such and such province. There's only 10 provinces. Like, why take so much time? I don't know.
Yeah, but like I said, anytime you have a project, that communicating with people and bringing them along is a big part. We all think, oh, it's the work itself. Ta-da! It's not. It's sharing and bringing people along. That's the hard part
Yeah,
of
but
it
that's the
because some
collaboration
people,
aspect you mentioned at the beginning,
that's,
right?
yeah, that's the collaboration
That's
expert.
the coffee chat in the room. That's in the corridors.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. It's
yeah,
like, don't be afraid of this. Don't be
yeah.
afraid of Gen AI. Don't be afraid of agentic AI and now identic AI, like whatever. Don't be afraid of it. Let's talk about it. Let's just gently move it forward. But we have to keep stepping forward. We're not stepping backwards and we're not stepping off. We're gently stepping forward.
Verity, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, Meredy.
Hi, it's good to see everybody. Thanks, Irene. This is really interesting. Your passion is coming through in terms of your enthusiasm for the various topics and projects you've been involved in. Could you speak a little bit, because I'm seeing it looks like we've got quite a relatively youthful group of people who want to be active. So, how easy was this to do this earlier in your career? Does your role as a woman, because the topic's collaboration, does that make a difference in terms of how you approach this? You've talked a little about softening, and then just, how important is that passion for a particular topic where you want to have an impact?
Wow. Okay. So I agree. Early in my career, this was hard because I was kind of thinking, what do I want to do? I knew I wanted to have a more systemic impact on learning and bringing people along, but I didn't know what that looked
Yeah.
like.
So,
I just didn't know what that looked like. And so I would take any kind of job that was not my normal job. Like I marked a lot for CPA exams. If people needed
so
a little course created, I'd do that. If people wanted a case, if anybody approached and said, I would do it. And so when I said get involved with publishers and maybe provincial institutes for helping write stuff, um, it's kind of, I wouldn't say grunt work because I love writing and I love writing cases, but it is kind of the grunt work. You'll do whatever. You'll
so
just get out there, get yourself out there, and something will open in front of you. I know, Charles, you're in my mind the shining example of a sustainability person, right? And Leanne also. But when we started the Comp Map, um, sustainability wasn't there on the table. It was one of our members said, "Hey," and he actually said ESG, and we're like, and then I got more involved with Charles and Leanne. You guys helped a lot, we had working groups and getting your input. And then it just came out, right? So you just have to get somewhere and listen and be open and be ready to roll up your sleeves and do some nitty-gritty stuff. Like I learned I worked at KPMG originally. I learned the most as a rookie because I got to do inventory counts and,
mm,
just bank records, so stupid stuff that other people will go, I'm not doing an inventory. I'll go because I found it was interesting because I could see what they made. I got to go to factories. I flew up to North Bay in a tiny little plane. I climbed up silos. I learned so much about the businesses that. So it's just like, get in there, get your hands. It may not look like it's leading you where you want to go, but just by getting involved, you have a better understanding and you'll meet people and people will see your passion. Now, as a woman, I find that hard because I don't like when they have, oh, let's do a women in action. Let's do a women. I hated those because I always thought, well, the presumption is that women are not equal. And I don't know whether it's my upbringing. I had parents with strong views about the equality piece. And so I never joined those because I refused to accept that premise. I just would put myself in there. And often I found myself the only woman in the room, Meredy, to tell you the truth. And it is hard to be the only woman in the room. I'm going to tell you that. Even when I worked at KPMG, I worked up to senior manager and then stepped off to have my kids, because yeah, women have to do that if they want kids, right? But it was hard to be the only woman in the room because the way you're presenting things wasn't always the same way that the majority of the room would perceive them. And I did see that. I mean, I saw that often. In the academic environment, I was often the only woman in the room throughout most of my career. And, I even had, as I got older, I had female students come to me and say, "Are you teaching us? Because we are taught by all men." I'm like, that's terrible. What's wrong with our institution? You know, so um, so I think being a woman is you got to think about how you present things and how you position yourself. But we need to be at those tables. I never gave an inch on that. I'm like, no, I'm there. I need to be there, and you're not stopping me from being there. And you're not going to say just because I have a different perspective that it's invalid. No, I would just retreat, go back quietly. Charles, there was my long game there too. I'd go quietly behind the scenes and think, I'm going to go at this another way if I have to. And that's kind of what I did. But the passion, you have to get a passion for something. You have to. It's like, I am very passionate about anything. And one of the, just as an aside, when we moved over to COVID and the pandemic, I'm sure many of us felt this. It's easy to show passion when you're in person. I found it was quite draining to show passion online. Obviously, now I've learned how to do it. But when I first was teaching online through COVID, I would be exhausted. And I said to my husband, I don't know why I'm so tired. I'm just sitting at my desk. Normally in the room, I'm walking around, I'm talking to students, whatever, and I'm more tired sitting at my desk. And feel that's because we have to learn to project that passion through the screen. So if you do workshops and whatever online, this is a skill you need to learn how to project the passion. And thank you, Meredith, for acknowledging that you can see my passion. I'm working hard here to put my passion out there, and I'm sure I'm going to be tired after this, but but it is an important skill to learn how to project your passion through the screen. Because increasingly we do a lot online, and it's great. It makes it accessible. Nobody has to travel, so yeah, that's a skill.
Thank you so much. That's great. And I think that long game is a really important one. And to make sure that people still hear about those early experiences when there were not many women in the profession, because it makes to me, it makes a tremendous difference. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, I certainly have learned a ton from, and we had chatted before, and I knew a little bit about your career, but I've learned a lot more. And I think this kind of approach to impact really rounds out some of the topics that we've been talking about at AFI with international involvement, education within Canada, working with other professions, which I just think is super cool as well, and thinking about impact in ways that are short term, but also long term, and that not everything's going to come to fruition right away. Maybe we'll take one more really quick question from Eve, and then I'll pass it back over to Charles to wrap up. Eve?
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Just a question about how you foster collaboration in the classroom. Thank you.
Okay. I think it's about a safe space. You have to create a safe space. People can't be afraid to collaborate. They can't be afraid to speak out. It is about making them comfortable, as simple as that. I think that's one thing I've learned over my lengthy career in teaching. Calling on students is intimidating, especially if it's somebody quiet. They might have anxiety over that. So it's like everything and nothing's a stupid question. So I would always start my classes by making them feel comfortable. I usually go into the audience and speak to individuals while they're arriving so that they've seen me up close. I'm not just the person at the front who's, whatever going on, but they've connected with me earlier. And I find that's important. Hang around at the breaks, but just make and when they ask a stupid question, tell them it's a wonderful question and there's no question too stupid. Like say that. Say this is a safe space. You can ask whatever question you want. So it's that allow them create the openness and the comfort so they know it's a safe space. It's nothing stupid, right? And it isn't really. Sometimes those questions are the hard ones. They seem like, what are you asking me? But really they're the hard ones. Hopefully that helps, Eve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Irene. I think everyone learned a lot. I know I learned a ton. And certainly your approach to impact and creating impact around the world and here in Canada is really inspiring. I will be trying to mimic some of the things that you've done with great aspiration. So thank you. Massive thank you to you for coming today. This is great.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure.
Great. I reiterate my thanks to you, Irene, on behalf of Qatar for Impact. It's been very inspiring. It's exactly what the kind of inspirational sharing that we're looking for. I would like to also thank everyone who attended today. As you see, I put the links of our website. We document all our events as well on our events page. Everything is recorded, put on YouTube and posted so that you can retrieve some of the events. You see that only this year we had 4 events online, ranging from collaboration actually also in Latin America, the creation of the network, to weaving indigenous approaches in classrooms from colleagues in New Zealand. We had Amer, I think, who is even here to talk about sustainability disclosure, his work that he's done in the past and currently as well in the aviation sector particularly. And then today, last year we had an in-person event on diversity, equity, inclusion, indigeneity. So we will be having more events, of course, next year. We are, of course, planning to do that again, 3 to 4 events a year. Do keep in touch. We do have a social media LinkedIn account. So do reach out. And we would like to also wish you a happy holiday season since we are at the end of the year. And we hope to see you fresh, motivated, and inspired to make impact like Irene does in the new year in 2026 and beyond. So on behalf of Account for Impact, thank you for joining us, and we will be in touch. You can again reach out, and we'll be emailing you and posting on our social media. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.